God's blessings to everyone. This is a DGHradio.com news update for the Caribbean, and I'm reporter SGD reporting the news covering the latest developments from across the Caribbean. Point. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, voters are at the polls today in a tightly watched general election that will determine whether the current government secures a sixth consecutive term in office or hands power to the opposition. More than 100,000 registered electors are choosing representatives for 15 seats in the House of Assembly, with economic opportunity, cost of living, and climate resilience high on the agenda. The long-serving governing party is campaigning on its record of social programs, infrastructure, and disaster recovery, while the main opposition is pressing concerns about youth employment and rising prices. Point. Regional observers are monitoring the vote, and authorities are appealing for calm as results are expected to emerge later tonight. Turning to regional security, the Dominican Republic has formally authorized the United States to operate inside restricted areas at the San Isidro Air Base and Las Americas International Airport as part of a stepped-up campaign against drug trafficking. For a limited period, U.S. aircraft will be able to refuel and move equipment and technical personnel from these sites, with both governments insisting the arrangement is technical, temporary, and under Dominican law and sovereignty. Officials in Santo Domingo say the goal is to strengthen an ATOS air and maritime protection ring that can better detect and disrupt smugglers moving cocaine and other narcotics through Caribbean corridors. At the same time, the broader U.S. strategy of striking suspected drug boats at sea has raised fresh debate in the region about transparency, human rights, and how smaller states balance security partnerships with concerns about excessive force. In Jamaica, the government has made a formal appeal to the international community for a comprehensive reconstruction support package following the devastating impact of Hurricane Melissa. Officials are warning that the cost of rebuilding homes, tourism facilities, roads, schools, and health centers, especially in the hardest-hit western parishes, cannot be carried by domestic resources alone without reversing years of work to reduce debt. Kingston is seeking a mix of grants, highly concessional loans, and innovative financing tools that can adjust to future climate shocks, arguing that a country repeatedly struck by major storms should not be pushed back into unsustainable borrowing after every disaster. Civil society groups at home are calling for any package to prioritize low-income communities and local contractors so that rebuilding not only restores hotel belts, but also strengthens everyday resilience for ordinary families. As part of that recovery, Jamaica's National Housing Trust is moving ahead with a rapid deployment housing program for families displaced by Hurricane Melissa. The agency is procuring an initial batch of about 2,500 semi-permanent units built from reinforced insulated panel systems designed for quick assembly on prepared sites. Each unit is roughly 400 square feet with space for sleeping, cooking, sanitation, and family living, and is intended for deployment first in parishes such as St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, and Hanover, where damage has been most severe. Some of the units will be available for purchase by regular contributors to the housing system, while others are expected to be allocated in partnership with social support agencies to the most vulnerable households, including people who were not previously NHT contributors. Authorities say the goal is to move families out of overcrowded shelters and damaged buildings into safer, more dignified spaces, while longer-term reconstruction plans take shape. Education recovery is also underway. Denbigh High School in central Jamaica, which escaped the worst of the hurricane with only limited damage, has been fully back in session for several weeks and is now extending help to harder-hit schools in the West. Point. School leaders report that the campus, which serves well over 1,000 students, lost only a water tank and was able to prioritize exam classes before quickly reopening to all grades. Staff have been tracking the small number of students who have not yet returned, offering psychosocial support and practical guidance to families still dealing with storm impacts. Beyond its own grounds, Denbei has coordinated donations of supplies and sent teams of students and teachers to assist with cleanup and recovery activities at a sister institution in a severely affected parish, demonstrating how relatively spared communities can play a direct role in the national rebuilding effort. Meanwhile, the Dominican Republic is experiencing a surge in tourism as it absorbs visitors whose plans in other islands were disrupted by Melissa. Authorities there have approved roughly 800 additional flights over the coming months, a mix of scheduled and charter services aimed at handling demand redirected from Jamaica and other destinations, still restoring hotel capacity and infrastructure. The country has already recorded more than 8 million visitors so far this year, with tourist arrivals and hotel occupancy climbing sharply as the peak winter season approaches. The contrast is stark. While Dominican resorts prepare for near full occupancy over Christmas and New Year's, many workers in heavily damaged parts of Jamaica and neighboring territories are still facing lost income, underscoring how climate-driven shocks can shift tourism benefits from one island to another almost overnight. In Trinidad and Tobago, Parliament has passed the Home Invasion, Self-Defense and Defense of Property Bill 2025 in the House of Representatives without the support of the opposition. The legislation is designed to give clearer legal protection to householders who use force, including potentially lethal force, when confronting intruders inside their homes. Government ministers argue that the measure responds to rising public fear about violent break-ins and will deter criminals by strengthening the legal footing of victims acting in genuine self-defense. Point. Opposition legislators and some legal experts, however, warn that the bill's broad language could encourage vigilante behavior or make it harder to hold people accountable when force is excessive, and the proposal now moves to the Senate, where those concerns are expected to be revisited. Also in Trinidad and Tobago, the Ministry of Education is preparing a large-scale rollout of laptop computers to students as part of a push to close the digital divide that became painfully clear during the COVID-19 pandemic. The devices will be distributed mainly to public secondary schools and selected primary schools, with priority for students in lower income communities and those identified as lacking reliable access to a computer at home. Education officials say the laptops are intended not only for homework and exam preparation, but also to build long-term digital literacy, provided that teachers receive adequate training to integrate technology meaningfully into lessons. Stakeholders note that success will depend on pairing hardware with stable internet access, updated curricula, and support for students with special needs, so that digital tools do not simply mirror existing inequalities in a new form. Health authorities across the Americas, including the Caribbean, are on alert as avian influenza AH5N1 continues to circulate widely in wild birds, poultry, and some mammals in the region. While the overall risk to the general public is still assessed as low, the virus has caused repeated outbreaks in animals and a small number of human infections linked to close contact with sick or dead birds, at least one of them fatal. Governments are being urged to maintain strict biosecurity on farms, monitor unusual die-offs in wildlife, and ensure that workers who handle birds or livestock use protective equipment and hygiene measures. The situation has sharpened attention on antimicrobial resistance and broader One Health strategies, and this week a regional spotlight fell on Trinidad and Tobago's Dr. Rajiv Nagasar, who received the first PA Ho Chu Caribbean Antimicrobial Resistance Leadership Award for more than a decade of work building surveillance systems, metrics, and behavior change programs to slow the spread of drug-resistant infections. On the economic and medical front, Barbados has signed a landmark agreement with Nigeria aimed at boosting pharmaceutical manufacturing and regulatory cooperation between the Caribbean, Latin America, and West Africa. The partnership focuses on building industrial capacity, sharing technical expertise, and harmonizing standards so that essential medicines and vaccines can be produced closer to home and reach patients more affordably. Barbadian officials say the pact supports a wider vision of a pharmaceutical bridge, linking small states with larger markets, while Nigerian counterparts see opportunities for joint ventures and expanded access to CARICOM and Latin American customers. If implemented effectively, the deal could create skilled jobs, strengthen regional supply chains exposed during the pandemic, and make it easier for governments on both sides of the Atlantic to negotiate better prices for critical drugs. In regional aviation, Venezuela has revoked landing rights for 6 major international carriers, including airlines from Spain, Portugal, Colombia, Brazil, and Turkey, deepening its isolation from key long-haul markets. The move has left many travelers scrambling for alternative routes, but Caribbean Airlines was not among the carriers affected, leaving it as one of the few remaining links between Venezuela and the wider Caribbean. In more positive news for passengers, Caribbean Airlines has also introduced a free, network-wide digital baggage tracking system that sends automatic notifications as checked bags move through the journey. The airline hopes that this upgrade will reduce stress over misplaced luggage, cut handling costs, and bring its service more in line with larger international carriers, a welcome development for a region heavily dependent on reliable air links. Looking at culture and tourism, Grenada has announced plans for its first ever National Flower Festival, scheduled for November 8th to 15th, 2026. Point. The week-long event will showcase the island's gardens, floral artistry, and award-winning horticultural talent through garden tours, large-scale installations, workshops, and community competitions. Organizers say the festival is designed not only to attract visitors interested in nature and tranquility, but also to support small farmers, landscapers, and artisans who grow and work with flowers and ornamental plants. By anchoring the festival in sustainable practices and local participation, Grenada hopes to add a distinctive new attraction to the regional tourism calendar while reinforcing pride in the island's natural beauty and agricultural heritage. These and other issues are of great concern within the islands. Let us know your thoughts by texting your comments to 1-315-89-81449. You can also join our WhatsApp group and get the news, weather, and other insightful information delivered right to your smartphone. To join, text JOIN to 1-315-8981-449. Please include your name in the text message. You will receive a call to verify your request. I'm your reporter, SGD, signing off for DGHradio.com. Remember, SGD and DGH. Together we source, gather, and deliver daily global headlines because on DGHradio.com, the news never sleeps. Point. Ciao.